I often get emails and messages from viewers who ask if I could do videos on specific topics, and they're usually a good idea, but there's not enough to the topic to justify a full 20-minute, 30-minute, even 40-minute video. So what I've done for today is to combine those ideas and a few rants of my own to come up with today's topic. So join me with a tasty beverage of your choice close to hand while you listen to my plant rants. But before we get underway, I'm happy to take this opportunity to send out a special thanks to Loida, and I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, who bought me a coffee recently. Your contributions to my channel are very much appreciated and go a long way to keeping me in Hoya and Dischidia technology and infrastructure. So thank you very much for your support. And we've got several things blooming this week. And the first one up is my Hoya scortikini. Now it's not blooming at the moment, but it did start blooming right after I finished filming last week's video. So I hurriedly took some photos and wanted to share them with you. But I've had this one since 2022, and this is the first time it has bloomed, and I'm really pleased with those. It was labeled as Hoya scortikini pink, and I guess the pink would refer to those little dots near the corona. But yeah, it was nice. It was fun. It was a surprise. I went into water and there they were. So this is Hoya scortikini. Now, next up on my list, it's not in bloom yet, but I'm hoping that by the time, oh, come on, big plant, heavy plant. By the time that the video is done, it will have bloomed. And this is Hoya elliptica, and it's getting ready. Now, Hoya elliptica for me has been a problem child. It's a little finicky. I started off giving it, I found out, far too much light. So I've moved it into a lower light. It's in the fallout in front of one of my plant shelves. And I think that's in the third installment of the Long Hoya tour. And I keep doing this because I'm going to put a link to it up here, to that section of the tour. It doesn't seem to thrive, but it doesn't die. So yeah, I haven't quite come up with exactly what this thing wants. You know, it'll look lousy for a while and then it sends out like 2 new vines. So I don't know. This one needs to be tied up a little bit, but I'll take care of that. But anyway, with luck, this will bloom by the time this video is edited, and I'll have pictures, which I will have put in here so that you can see what the blooms look like. And the next one on my list, oh, okay, come on, not on top of the others. All right, is my Hoya lacunossa giant leaf. And this one is just a stunner. I like the leaves. I like the growth habit. It seems to me that the leaves on this one, here's one that's in the process of opening. It's not fully opened yet. That the leaves are definitely larger than a typical lacunossa. The blossoms also seem to be larger than a typical lacunossa. But this one has done very well for me. I had to cut it back earlier this year because it was, 7-8 feet long. So yeah, it does well. I just like everything about this one. This one's been fairly sturdy. It's done really well. Again, I like the look of the leaves and I do love those blooms. Now see, I had a viewer who told me that she thought she hated lacunossa because it smelled like cat pee. And I don't, like I said, I've never had a cat, so I don't know. To me, it makes me think of the smell when you walk into a flower shop or of hyacinth in the spring. But I could be wrong. The scent is in the nose of the inhaler. That's the way that adage goes, right? Anyway, this is Hoya lacunossa, giant leaf. Let's see what else we've got here. Hoya species Bengkulu Rindu Rafflesia is blooming again in there. And I'll include some close-up photos. There's some peduncles over here and some more peduncles over there. So this one seems to be pretty happy. I think this one would like a little bit less light. Those leaves strike me as being just a little pale. But it's grown up near the grow lights on that shelf. So we'll look at an optimistic trellis and doing a little work on it. But yeah, that's very cool. And finally blooming this week is my Dischidia ruscifolia. And Dischidia blooms are very tiny. Those little white flecks you see are blossoms on this little monster of a plant. I love this plant. I just love the whole look of it. It's just very, very pretty. Let's see if I can do this without causing a disaster. But yeah, tiny, tiny little trumpet-shaped blossoms in white. I will put close-ups over here because I know they're difficult. They might be difficult to see. But yeah, this is doing really well. This one grows on the front of my work desk in the plant room. I think this was in the second part of the Hoya tour. So I will put a link to that part up here. I'm trying to remember what I did. I don't know. If I can, I'll put it up there. This one just does really well. It's about, let's say, 1 meter or 36 inches, pulled back from a southeast-facing window. It gets a lot of fallout light from the other grow lights in the room. It's in an organic mix of my standard of cocoa husk chunks, bark, sphagnum moss, long fiber sphagnum, and pumice chunks in a self-watering pot. And it seems to really appreciate that setup. So yeah, it's always neat to look and see all these tiny little white blossoms down the length of this monster. Easy to grow. This is like, yeah, this is a good one. This is Hoya Dischidia ruscifolia. And my first rant is Hoyas are easy. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. They are not finicky. They're not difficult. Some of them require special care, but for the most part, they'll just do fine. You know, they're not delicate, petite, fragile little things. They're pretty good plants. When I first started, everything I read and saw on the internet told me that they were difficult you had to have special skills and talent. You had to have a magic touch to grow Hoyas. And absolutely none of that is true. Hoyas are easy to grow. If you haven't started growing them yet, we are here to lure you into the Hoya rabbit hole. Please come along, join us. There's room for everyone. But yeah, they're not difficult. They're not finicky. You can do this. You know, you can grow Hoyas and get them to bloom and thrive in your home. You may need to rethink a couple things, but it's nothing major, nothing dramatic, and you can handle this. You can grow Hoyas. And my next rant is, you don't need special equipment to grow Hoyas. You do not need IKEA cabinets. You do not need grow tents. You really don't even need grow lights. Now, all of those things can help, but they're not required. I don't have a cabinet. I don't have a grow tent. I do have some grow lights because I found that it just helps through the winter. But the other stuff, fancy equipment, you don't need any of that. I have a number of Hoyas that just grow out in ambient conditions in my home. They're not even in the plant room. They're in the bedroom. They're in the living room. They don't need any special expensive equipment. You know, you don't need to spend a fortune to get into collecting this genus. So if that was putting you off, put that aside. don't need anything special. And here's the first red flag for these rants, and that is if anyone tells you that they have the answer or they know the way or there's only one way to do this, just change the channel, go someplace else. There are as many different ways of growing Hoya and Dischidia and their relatives as there are growers. There's not just one way. So you will need to figure out for yourself what the best way is for you to grow Hoyas. And the way to do that is to listen to what other people suggest and then see what's going to work from that for you. If anybody tells you what to do, no. Most that anyone can do is say, this is what works for me. And then you can work from there. One of the things I get asked about all the time is my substrate, what I grow my Hoyas in. And by that, most people mean the substrate. Some people refer to it as soil, but don't do that. Don't call it soil, because it's not. So I use either a generic pon or an organic mix. Now, first thing I want to say is pon is not the answer. It's not the solution to all your Hoya growing problems. It's not the only way to do this. It's an option. Now, it's an option that works really well for me, but also my organic mix works really well for me. So there's not just one way to do this. You've got choices. You have to figure out what's going to work for you. Now, generic pon has no added fertilizer. The brand name pon has slow release fertilizer in it. And since I use these in a hydroponic method and I add nutrients, I don't want something already added by someone else. I want to know what's in there, what my base level is. Now, the generic pon, I buy it online. I don't mix my own. It's just easier for me to just I buy 2 bags. There's a bag of small, finer pon, and then there's a bag of like 3 to 5 millimeter pon, and I mix those together so I get an airy mix. And that's the key word in this, an airy mix. Now, some people think that they can add bark to their potting soil and that creates an airy mix, but it doesn't. That's a chunky mix. And chunky mix is not going to give you the best results with Hoya, in my experience. You want something that's really airy, something more akin to what you grow orchids in, the substrate you use for orchids. So if you can grab a handful of your mix and put it down and it stays in a ball, a lump, that's not airy enough. If you put it down, it should just fall apart. So my mix is cocoa husk chunks, fine bark, pumice, and long fiber sphagnum. And that works really well for me. I don't use any soil, I don't use any cocoa coir, and I don't use any cactus mix in my substrate. My substrate is airy enough that those fine things like soil, cocoa coir, cactus soil, even perlite would fall through the chunks and fall out the bottom. So I don't even bother with them. They don't bring anything to the party. I don't use perlite just because I don't particularly like it. I find that pumice works a little bit better for me. So all those 4 things that I mentioned, the cocoa husk chunks, the fine bark, the pumice, and the long fiber sphagnum, each one of those things brings something to the party. They all bring some level of moisture retention while still remaining airy and loose. And that's what you want to work for, airy and loose. Now, if you find a pre-made mix that works for you and it makes your life easier, absolutely use it, buy it, that's fine. I'm not telling you don't buy, and I've had people ask about different commercial blends. That's fine if it works for you. I usually had the other stuff laying around. I use the pon for my generic pon for bonsai, and same with the fine bark and some other things. So I usually had those things lying about. So it was easy for me to make up that mix. Now, the one comment I do want to make is if you're making a homemade organic mix, it does not have to be complex. I've seen people list recipes that's cocoa husk chunks and bark and pumice and perlite and leca and potting soil and cactus mix and all these other things in it. You don't need all those things. Mine has 4 ingredients. That's all you really need. Anything else, if you've got the other stuff laying around, and you want to use it, fine. But don't go out and buy it just to make up a Hoya mix. There's no need for it. Let's try and keep this simple. Don't make it any more complex than it needs to be. The next thing people ask me about is the pot, the kind I grow my plants in. And I think the container is more important than the substrate. You can use generic pond, you can use your own pond, you can use store-bought pond, you can use any kind of organic mix. But to me, a self-watering, wick-based pot is the most important thing. And by wick-based, I mean that there are wicks that hang out the bottom into a reservoir, so that it consists of an outer pot and an inner pot. And notice that there are slots and holes in this, so if you start using soil in this, it's all going to end up in this. So cactus mix and coco coir and potting soil, any of that kind of stuff is going to fall through the bottom and end up in here, and you're going to have a gloppy mess. And that's why you don't use those things. Now, they don't have to look like this. There are lots of manufacturers. I use these a lot because they're cheap, and I have a lot of plants. I wish that I had gotten ones with little windows in them, just so I don't have to lift it out to see what's in the bottom. But I've also kind of gotten to the point where I can lift the thing up and know that, oh yeah, it needs a drink. So buy what works for you if you're going to use a self-watering pot. And this, I think, is the key, more so than the substrate, almost more so than grow lights. Maybe this and grow lights are on the same level of things that will really help you grow your Hoyas. I use plastic. I know lots of people don't like the idea of using plastic. I know some people who are just dyed-in-the-wool terracotta folks. I appreciate that. I respect that. I like terracotta too. But for my Hoyas and using an organic mix, the pot itself, terracotta pot itself, will wick moisture out of the substrate. And that means you need to water a bit more frequently. I've got a lot of plants. I don't have that kind of time. So for me, plastic helps keep the substrate moist longer. So the pot itself does not contribute to the drying out of the substrate. And so that's important to me. Now, there's lots of different kinds of self-watering pots. There's some that have a little float that tells you what the moisture level is. Those are really good too. They usually don't have wicks. Some will, but they usually don't have wicks, and they rely upon moisture being in contact with the substrate. I've got a few of those. They work fine. These are just, for me, were less expensive, and I needed a bunch of them, so that's why I ended up with these. But wick-based, this is noisy when it's empty, wick-based self-watering pot is the most important thing for growing your Hoyas, in my experience. I'm not telling you what to do, but this is what works for me. Red flag number 2. If you're reading an article about taking care of your Hoyas and you come across the line that says, water when the top inch of soil is dry, close the book, shut down the page, walk away. That article is not going to give you the information you need. I've noticed that there are a lot of writers who have a plant template, and they switch out the name of the plant and the picture of the plant and repeat the same article over and over again, even when it comes to Hoyas. So my suggestion is, you do as you please, but I wouldn't suggest growing your Hoyas in soil to begin with. It's not airy enough. And waiting till the top inch of your Hoya soil is dry is not a good idea either, in my experience. It's not gonna, believe me, I did that at first. It's not gonna give you the results you want. And that's what it's all about, getting the results you want. So if you see that line about wait until the top inch of the soil is dry, walk away. This next one is a personal favorite of mine. rare and super rare. If you find a Hoya on Etsy and it's labeled rare or super rare, it's not. You are not going to find a rare or super rare Hoya on Etsy. If someone in Moose Knuckle, Idaho is offering a Hoya and they have it labeled as rare, that's not the case. No one in Moose Knuckle, Idaho has a rare or super rare Hoya. It may be uncommon, it may be difficult to find, but it's not rare or super rare. So let's, don't get taken in by that. If you search on Etsy for a particular kind of Hoya and you get 47 listings for that Hoya that all say rare or super rare, it's not. If it were rare or even super rare, you might find one listing, and even then it wouldn't be rare, it would just be uncommon and hard to find. Terms like rare and super rare are often tagged on a description to make you spend a little bit more than you had intended. So yeah, don't believe that for one little bit. And Etsy sellers, just stop it, okay? Just stop it. You're either trying to prey on the gullible and the new, or you kind of don't know what you're talking about. If you're offering it on Etsy, it's not rare or super rare. So just let's clean that up, okay? Thank you. I've recently heard from a viewer who said she's only been collecting Hoyas for 6 months and she just bought a Hoya and the price was in the triple digits. Now, if you can afford to do that, that's fine, and it's not my place to comment on that. But for the most part, if you're a new Hoya grower, during your first year, do not spend, you're not allowed to spend any more than 34 euros, 40 US dollars, 55 Canadian dollars, 60 Australian dollars, or 68 New Zealand dollars. And I just picked those on any one plant. Not your first year. You can't go above that level. You don't have enough experience yet to risk a triple-digit purchase. And the plus side being, after that first year, that triple-digit plant is now going to be less expensive than it was then. You don't have to have it right now. It's not the last one on the face of the earth. There will be more, and there will be less expensive. And while you're going through your Hoya learning curve, you don't need to take any financial hits. Get stuff that you can afford. Don't push your budget, and buy stuff that you can afford to lose, because things go wrong and plants die. Red flag number 3. I've seen a lot of listings on some online sites for new species or just discovered Hoyas, and they usually have the word red associated with them. So they'll be like, Hoya new thing, red. And I look at them and I see just a sun-stressed plant. So if you're new to Hoyas and you see a new species or a new discovery on a site like Etsy, and there are others, I'm not throwing all the blame on Etsy, just don't get taken in by that. I've seen some listings for plants selling in the triple digits, and it's just a sun-stressed verticillata. And some poor person is going to buy that, get it home, and it's not going to get that same bright light that it did from that seller, and the sun stressing is going to fade. So whenever you see listings for new discoveries or new species, it's just not the case. I've been collecting Hoyas for years, and I've only seen perhaps 2 new species become named species become available. So, don't buy into the hype, particularly if you're new. Stop and do your research. Yeah, the leaves can look absolutely beautiful, and boy, wouldn't it be great to have a red Hoya like that. But you can have a red Hoya like that and not spend triple digits. So just be really careful. And let's have a really good idea of what it is we're buying. Most of the stuff that you see For example, this is my Hoya lacunossa Asami. This is clone 2, and it's a mutant. Most of them are. Hoyas have a propensity for sending out, and if you've grown Hoyas, you know this, sending out a weird vine from time to time. For example, this lovely Asami with the outer variegation sent out this vine. That's a mutant vine. It's some little genetic fluke that it decided it could send out a white vine and that would be fine. Now that could be that the plant has more splash, that vine has more splash than other vines, or that it's got a silver color or a ghost look to it that the other vines don't have. I could presumably take a cutting of this, try and root it, and if it rooted and produced the same kind of effect with major outer variegation, then I could try selling this as Hoya Asami Blonde. It's not a new species, it's not a new discovery. It's a mutation that happens naturally with plants, particularly with Hoyas, that looks different or has some unique characteristics. Now that doesn't mean that they're not great plants. So, for example, an inner variegated or an outer variegated plant are mutants. It's a variation that occurred that is stable for the most part and will carry on as you grow the plant. But it's not a new species, and it's not something you're going to find in the wild. It's a mutation, a variation that occurred and was propagated by people. So let's understand that's a lot of what you're buying. And it's not necessarily stable. This is my Hoya lacunossa intervariegated. And apparently it decided that it had enough of doing leaves like that and was going to start doing leaves like this. Now, I've had this plant for a very long time, and it's been a beautiful variegated plant. But something kicked it off, probably stress or lack of good care on my part, which is always a possibility. And so it started producing green leaves, vines with all green leaves. What you can do is try and cut those particular vines back to encourage growth in the variegated versions of those vines. But that's not always a guarantee. It doesn't always happen. And any variegation or extra splash or a ghost effect or a silver effect is not necessarily stable. It can revert, which is what is happening with this deer plant. So what I may try and do is take a cutting of one of these variegated vines and see if I can get it going from that again. But particularly if you're new to Hoyas, know that the characteristics for which you're buying that plant may not be stable. And that's just to be expected. Plants can revert. I don't usually do this much talking, so. Okay. Stop checking the roots. I see lots and lots of postings on lots and lots of sites where people say, well, I've checked the roots every week for the last couple of weeks, or I need to go in and check the roots. And no, you don't. Leave them alone. Every time you go in and dig around in the roots, you're going to damage some roots. It's unavoidable. It's just going to happen, no matter how careful you are. Even if you just lift the whole root ball out as one, there's going to be some damage to roots. So stop checking the roots all the time. You're doing that is going to be one of the prime causes your plant is doing well. If you believe that there's something wrong with the roots, what I usually do is I'll take out the inner pot and I'll flush it with hydrogen peroxide. If there's root mealies in there, if there's some rot going on, if there's some other stuff going on, the hydrogen peroxide will take care of most of it. So, and I don't mean just a few little squirts. Pour until the hydrogen peroxide comes out the bottom. Let it sit for 2 or 3 minutes, and then flush it with room temperature water and then put it back in its setup. But don't keep digging around in the pot, checking the roots to see how they're doing, looking for rot. It's not helpful. You know, sometimes you just have to trust what's going on there. And if you think there's a problem, then find another solution other than digging around and unpotting your plant just to look at the roots. Hoyas don't like that. Hoya names. Don't give me they're difficult and hard to learn. Oh, it's so complicated. Get over doing things that are not easy, okay? Get into doing the difficult stuff. The reason is because Hoya names tell you a lot about the plant itself. So for example, let me try that again with my hands in frame. There we go. Hoya species Kalimantan. Now, that is not a name. That's a designation. And you break that up into two parts. Hoya species from Kalimantan. Now, that Hoya has not been given an official name yet. It's just a way of identifying that particular plant by where it came from. So knowing that will help you know some more about the plant. The next one is an accession number, and I'm using a made-up one, and this is Hoya RO25-003. Now that tells you that it's a Hoya. That's the Hoya part. RO25 in many cases would be the initials of the person who found that plant and the year in which they found it. So RO would be the person's initials, 25 would be for 2025, and then a number. Because when you're out collecting plants in the wild, you don't know for sure what things are. You can look at it and say, that looks like it could be a Hoya. I'm going to take a cutting or a couple cuttings, put them in a bag, and I'm going to label it. What's the next number? Okay, 003. And then when I get back and grow it out and can do some more research, see what the blossoms are like, then we can determine whether or not it's a Hoya. And then after further research and growing the plant out some more, we can publish it with an actual name. Now, accession numbers. Never add an accession number. If you bought something that was Hoya big name, and you see Hoya big name on someone else's site, and you say, mine looks just like that, and they've got that accession number, I'm just going to add the accession number. Don't do that. You're not allowed to do that. That's against the rules. If your plant didn't come with the accession number, you can't add it. Once it's lost forever. So that's why it's important to keep the record of that you bought that plant with that accession number. That's important. If your plant has a name like Hoya Nuna or Hoya Sunrise or Hoya Patricia, where the Hoya is capitalized and the name like Nuna, Patricia, or Sunrise is capitalized and in single quotes, that tells you that it's a hybrid. Now, there's nothing wrong with hybrids, but that just means that someone either deliberately or accidentally crossed two Hoyas and produced this new plant. So that's why it's important that you keep the capitalization rules about this, and that will make sense with the next one. So if you have Hoya Patricia, Patricia is always capitalized, Sunrise is always capitalized, Nuna is always capitalized, usually in single quotes. And the last one is an actual Hoya name that's been assigned by the botanical scientific community. And that's things like Hoya lacunossa or Hoya calistophylla. Hoya is the genus, lacunossa or calistophylla is the species. And those are not capitalized. They're always lowercase. Anything after that is an identifier or a descriptor or a variety name. So if it's Hoya lacunossa splash, splash is not part of the name of the plant. That's just a descriptor that says that this particular clone of lacunossa seems to have more splash than they usually do. Or inner or outer variegated, or ghost, or silver. It's still a Hoya lacunossa, it just happens to have these additional characteristics. Sometimes those characteristics are given their own name, like Hoya lacunossa Louisa's silver. It's still a lacunossa, but this particular clone Someone assigned it that name. Some person, not the scientific community, assigned it that name just to help differentiate it from others. So anything that comes afterwards, Splash, Louisa's Silver, Pink, those are all descriptors and they're not part of the actual name. That's why they're either put in single quotes, as in Louisa's Silver, or in parentheses as a descriptor. Food. Hoyas, like the rest of us, like to be fed. The guidelines used to be sort of like water weekly with orchid fertilizer. I grow my Hoyas in, as I showed you, wick-based self-watering pots, which is often referred to as a passive hydroponic system, meaning that there is no engine or mechanism forcing the flow of water through this nutrient solution, not water, nutrient solution through the system. It's passive. It's there. The plants can draw it up. So I use a nutrient solution all the time. There are no nutrients in generic pond. So I have to provide them for my plant. Water alone is not going to do it. There's just not enough in water. And because I'm somewhat lazy, I use the same nutrient solution for my Hoyas that are in an organic mixture. As I said, I'm trying to keep this simple. Let's not make this any more complex than it needs to be. So even during the winter, my plants get nutrient solution all the time. They don't really know that it's winter. The temperatures might be slightly cooler, but they're in the house. It might be slightly darker, or the light seems to last less time, but I've got my grow lights on for between 12 and 14 hours a day, so they really don't notice a change in light. The temperatures may be more even, the humidity may be a little bit more even, a little bit higher, but for the most part, I feed my Hoyas year-round. They still grow in the winter, and some Hoyas actually like the cooler temperatures of the spring and the fall. And that's when they do their blooming and they do their heavy growing. Particularly the ones from the Himalayas and northern India and from central China. They're evolved to grow in cooler conditions, and so that's what they prefer. So yeah, I feed my Hoyas year-round with a nutrient solution. And there's several on the market. You don't have to use the one I use, but yeah, Hoyas want to be fed. Your Hoyas should be growing like weeds. They should be lush. You should be wondering about what you're going to do with the cuttings, or that the plant has grown too big for the space you set aside for it. Even during the winter months, here in southern New England in the northern hemisphere, so we're just heading into that time period now, my Hoyas grow. They grow through the winter. They may slow down a bit. The temperatures in the plant room are usually around 70 to 72 degrees. It's a little cooler than it is during the summer, but not by much. I keep the humidity at 45 to 50%. In the summer, the humidity here gets up to around 55 to 60% on average, so it's a little bit drier. The light stays pretty much the same, so they keep growing. And your Hoyas should be growing too, year-round. They should be lush, and you should be wondering about what you're going to do with them. If they're not, and you've checked for pests, which means to give it a good going over for spider mites, and not every spider on your plant is a spider mite. Some spiders are actually very beneficial, so don't always panic about that. If you've checked for mealybugs and find no signs of them, and if you've checked for flat mites and you need a jeweler's loupe or a microscope to look because you can't see them with the naked eye. So you've checked those, you've eliminated pests, then it's time to try something else. Whether it's changing the food, changing the light, changing the watering ritual, changing the container, changing the substrate, it's time to try something else. Your plants should be going crazy, and if they're not, then you need to rethink something. But don't go and change all 5 of those things or any other combination. Change one thing. Change one thing about the plant. And before you move everything to pond or move everything to self-watering, try making one simple change with the plant. Give it more or less light. Simple. You'll know within a couple weeks, a month, if that was a smart move. You might even know sooner than that if it wasn't the right move. Or changing the watering schedule, that you try and keep the substrate at a more even level of moisture rather than drying out and getting saturated and drying out and getting saturated. That's not always the best approach. So make one change. But if you're, as I said, if your Hoyas aren't growing like crazy, it's time to try something a little different. Rethink your thought process. Relax. It's just a plant. Your value as a human being is not based upon your ability to grow a Hoya. Things happen, things go wrong, life gets in the way, stuff happens. Do not panic about how your Hoyas are doing. If you do that, you're taking all the fun out of it. It should be an experiment. It should be an adventure. And along those same lines, as I said, never buy a plant you can't afford to lose. If you spend a lot of money on a Hoya and you're terrified that it's going to die, then don't spend that money. Don't buy that. This is supposed to be fun. It's supposed to be an adventure. You're supposed to be trying things out, trying new techniques, new styles, listening to what other people suggest and thinking about what would work for you. It's supposed to be fun. Don't get yourself ate up about it. Don't make it more complex than it needs to be. Keep this whole thing as simple as possible. It's supposed to be fun. So mainly what these rants have been about is not how you should grow your Hoyas, but about what has worked for me. Again, if what you're doing isn't working, then maybe it's time to try something different. I also want to keep you safe. Most of the people out there selling Hoyas are really wonderful people. I have had great experiences with them. That's why in my regular videos, I will list the name of the seller if I've had a good experience with them so that you can feel confident about ordering from them. I also want you to make things simple on yourself. There's all kinds of complexities I've seen suggested about how you need this and this and this and this, expensive things, elaborate things. They're not necessary. They can be fun, and I'm not saying don't do them, but you don't have to. Let's keep this simple, make it easy on yourself. And the other thing I want is for you to be successful. I don't have any particular growing skills. I don't have green thumbs. See, they're just kind of this pale kind of Northern European pink color. A little more wrinkly than they used to be, but hey, what can you do? It doesn't take any particular skill or understanding. You can grow all these plants and you can have fun doing it. And that's what I want. I want all of you out there, all my viewers, to have successful experiences with Hoyas. So that's what this has all been about. And the question for the comments. Last week's about what has surprised you about growing Hoyas. Everybody's had similar experiences. It's kind of neat. The overall one was that everybody was just amazed by the variety, that you can have so many different leaf shapes and variegation and colors and sizes and growing experiences all within this one amazing genus. And I think that's what really was the most outstanding comment that people made, that it was so much fun, that there is something for everyone in this genus. If you don't think you like Hoyas, I can find one you do. So the question for the comments this week, for the comments below, is tell me something, one thing that you have changed from when you started growing Hoyas to now that improved your success, that made it easier to grow Hoyas, that worked really well for you. And it's because I'm curious, but other people read these comments too, and someone may see something that works for them. It's like, oh yeah, I could do that. So one thing that you've changed about growing Hoyas that's really worked for you. And as always, I want to thank you for choosing to spend a little bit of your time with me this week's end. Please remember to click the thumbs up like button, to subscribe, and to hit the notification bell. They all really help my channel grow, and they're important. A lot of the products that you've seen me use are available through my Amazon storefront. There's a link below in the description. I receive a small commission from the sale of those items. It helps support the channel, but it doesn't increase your price at all. If you're in the market for grow lights, there's a link in the description to the Sansi LED lights page. Again, I receive a small commission on the sale from those pages, and they help support the channel, but it doesn't increase your price. And if you use my code, Planted in RI, you get a 30% discount from the prices you find on that site. If you'd like to support the channel directly, there's a link below to my Buy Me a Coffee page, or there's a link down here, a thanks button, and YouTube takes care of the processing for all of that. As always, links to a couple more videos over here, and please enjoy the rest of your week's end.